Welcome to the Pivot Point podcast. This season, I am focused on real-time hot topics in the gender equality and diversity spaces. In this episode, I will break down a current event, provide my point of view, what I liked and what I would like to see change, and leave you with some actionable tips to think about and discuss with your organization. I share this information because equality is a candid conversation. It takes bravery and courage, and you don't have to do it alone. At Pivot Point, I believe we are stronger together. We are one. So let's get to this week's episode. I've got a couple hot topics. It was a busy week this week. And I have one qualification from last week. Actually, I'm going to retract and add to what I said in the episode. So if you didn't check out last week's episode, it was revisiting Me Too and exploring the allegations against Joe Biden with the women that accused him of entering their personal space. You probably understand or saw it somewhere between Saturday Night Live, Twitter, and the social media world. It was everywhere. If not, check out the episode, check out our point of view. I actually got some really good feedback from an ally this week, and our allies do this, right? They help us see what we can't see. And they shared, Julie, I like your perspective on he listened to learn, and he acknowledged that gender norms have changed over the years. But what I didn't hear you say is he needed to apologize. And I really took that to heart of, yeah, that is an very reasonable expectation that there has been no apology, no admission of guilt, just simply saying, okay, I didn't mean to, my bad, I'll listen and learn. Now, there hasn't been a one-on-one dialogue between him and his accusers. I don't believe either. So that kind of prevents that from happening. But a public apology probably wouldn't be so bad for Mr. Biden. So that was a good addition to last week's episode. So I want you to know I listen to my listeners. And when they give me feedback, I don't take it personally. I take it as an opportunity to get better. And that's why I'm sharing that addition this week. But digging into this week's topics, two things I wanted to talk about. And I'm going to link to these in the show notes. First, there was an awesome blog posted by Kyle Korver, who is an NBA basketball player with the Utah Jazz. It titled it Privileged. Kudos to him. Bravo. Check out his blog. It is a fascinating read. He talks about his own kind of what I call a white male epiphany around having privilege. That's a hard word for most Caucasian men to share. I call it the P word sometimes to help people feel more comfortable in my training sessions. But he digs in deep and leans in hard as an ally in his understanding of experiences that happen to his colleagues of color versus himself. He uses examples like a nightclub, one of his colleagues being arrested, and his first response was, why was he there? Versus, he was wrongly accused. Let's defend him, right? Which we might have done with a white colleague. So just understanding our own bias in the moment and calling time out on ourselves. I really liked his own personal narrative around that. And he used other examples of fans and racist behavior and what we can do as allies. The NBA is people of color dominated, 75%. And so as the underrepresented, which is very rare, white male, he believes it is his duty to step into this conversation. And I like what he said. So specifically in the article I'll link to in the show notes, I like what he said. He said, we need to push ourselves another step further. First, by identifying that less visible, less obvious behavior as what it is, racism. And then second, by denouncing that racism actively and at every level. Wow. And so he is what I would call an advocate as an ally. And my ally, Jennifer Brown, has an ally Continuum tool that I just love. And it starts with apathy, no understanding of the issue. That's not helpful. It's like, oh, that doesn't happen here. Oh, we have one woman on our board. We're good. The second piece is awareness. So now I know that someone's treated different than me and that's not okay kind of thing. But I didn't do anything about it. I didn't say anything. I was probably a bystander in the awareness category. Then I move on to activity. I become an active ally. And I'm going to say and do something the next time I see that happen. This is exactly what Kyle's advocating for allies to do, to lean in. I see a lot less activity in the active space, and then advocacy, which is what he's doing. He's actually taking a public platform, taking this message forward in a much bigger way than his individual actions and multiplying it across a huge audience. So I got tons of traction on ESPN and on the news and in social media. I know I shared it. Many people shared it as well. And so this is an excellent space. And I also want to note with this one, sports. It's a great opportunity to leverage that platform and that microphone that our icons in sports can get the attention on these issues. Had it just been, Joe Smith, I don't think the blog would have went so viral, right? And so think about Serena Williams has been advocating for gender equality. Abby Wambach just wrote a great new book, Wolfpack, highly recommend it. Quick read, very effective. And they're both leveraging the platform that they have as a female top performer in the sports arena. And Kyle is a great example of that too, right? I have the ability to influence people. I'm going to leverage that for positive change. So I love this. People in the public sphere, leverage your voices. You amplify the voices of others. Had this been said by a person of color, this blog probably would not have gone so viral. It's interesting because of the title. It's interesting because of the stories. It's interesting of the line he draws in the sand and the call for more leading like allies. And so that brings me to another critical issue. And this is a not so good one that I noticed. So I have a peer group and I was meeting with my peer group this week and told them about the hot topics, and they shared a really interesting hot topic from their perspective. Artificial intelligence, AI, is a big wave of the future, right? Self-driving cars, we have Alexa, we have Siri, we have all these things that are artificial intelligence. And there's a lot of money going towards it because we see the future is AI. Well, here's the issue that they shared with me in the latest research from wired.com, which I'll share in the show notes. Women are a small minority. So even worse than the tech story, even worse than the super male-dominated industry story. In fact, the AI industry is 12% women, 88% male. And so this is very problematic. And so I got curious whenever someone brings me a hot topic. I'm like, I'm going to dig in and do some research. So I actually got on the phone with a couple folks in the AI space, and I asked them why. Why is this an issue? It's even worse than tech. And, tech usually is around 20%. And they usually use the college graduation rate as an example of a reason why, which I have all sorts of issues with that, but we won't go into that. So think about it. From a developer perspective, what the AI folks shared with me is that it's a much more complex skill set in AI that you have to have versus regular programming, software development, marketing, other skills inside tech companies. And I thought about that and said, that's interesting. So more education, you have to have more time in the role, which there's a lot of trickle out of women in organizations, tend not to stay as long because of lack of inclusion and little signals every day you don't belong. And in fact, what the examples I heard of that this week from women in AI is they said, I feel like I have to keep track of sports and, drink beer, and I can't talk about the books I'm really reading. So essentially covering in this environment. And if it's 88% male, women and women of color are certainly probably not feeling welcomed and heard inside these organizations. So it's very much a self-fulfilling problem. Now, I like to talk solutions, not just problems. So it's at 12%, right? And there's some stark things with this. This industry is huge. So much of our world will be affected by AI. So if it continues to be developed by just men, for the large part, we are missing out on a whole perspective, and likely the perspective largely of the consumer base, that a lot of women buy AI products and solutions. And so this is a big deal. And I think companies really need to wake up to this. And so if I were at a company that had AI and had issues like this with gender equality in the workplace, I would really question the rationale for the education and the process that's required. Not to lower the standards by any means, but hey, you're probably hungry for talent. Are there things that we could do to bring diverse talent in and provide them with education and opportunities and experiences so that they could advance in the pipeline a little bit more quickly? Are there out-of-the-box solutions to help them understand this skill set? Are we encouraging the women that are here in developer roles that are succeeding to get into the AI space, or are we just kind of leaving them behind? And so think about that. Challenge the norms, challenge some of the requirements. Are those job requirements truly all necessary? Are there baby steps we could take? Are there words of encouragement we could provide to underrepresented groups? So as an ally, our choice is to lead like an ally. I encourage you to take any one of these topics, the Me Too conversation, the Kyle Korver, privileged story in public advocacy, as an opportunity for you to be a public advocate. And this AI example, look at your industry. If you're not in AI, what could you do to not be the next AI, right? It's a big problem to fix now. How can you challenge? What are our percentages? What does good look like? What are we doing to change that and be more equitable across genders? So that is today's episode and hot topics for you. Thank you for tuning in as always and being an ally. Did you know that you can find all 3 seasons of our 40 plus episodes at nextpivotpoint.com, and you can sign up for our next free online workshop, get access to our 5 questions to get the gender equality conversation started in your organization, and ask me, Julie, your questions directly. I appreciate you listening to this episode. Who do you know that needs to hear this message? Hit the share button, connect with me on Instagram at nextpivotpoint, and you can find me on LinkedIn. I post daily. Julie Kratz, Kratz. I host this podcast because I believe we are stronger together. We are one.